We're running out of time here, so I have a few questions that I kind of ask all of the guests that I'd like to run through.
Okay.
First off, what's the biggest compromise that you've had to make to get where you are?
Good question. I think probably the biggest compromise was when we decided it made sense strategically to merge AOL with a larger company, and we ended up merging with Time Warner to enable that deal to go forward. I agreed to step down as CEO, and so kind of stepping aside, from from AOL and from something that I helped birth, was kind of a compromise that was necessary in order for that merger to happen. And we concluded that merger because AOL had gone from a $70 million value when we went public in 1992 to a $160 billion value 8 years later, that it did make sense to merge with a larger company that would give us a more diversified mix of businesses. So I think it was right strategically, but it was a compromise in terms of my willingness to kind of step aside.
Yeah, it's interesting that kind of some of the problems that happened with that merger were people and maybe culture clashes and such, and those are some of the very most difficult impediments in the third wave as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the lessons I learned, obviously the hard way, and that's why I devoted probably the longest chapter in the book to some of the lessons learned around the merger, which essentially, as you say, was around people and culture. The idea of the merger made sense, the execution didn't. And I love this Thomas Edison quote, which I reference a lot, which is vision without execution is hallucination. So it's one thing to say, as we did, 15, 16 years ago when we announced the merger of AOL and Time Warner, that we were going to lead the way on digital music. Remember, this is 5+ years before Apple even launched the iPod and entered digital music. And our company, because AOL was the largest internet platform and Time Warner owned Time Warner Cable, the largest broadband system, and owned Warner Music, the largest music company, how could that company not lead the way in digital music? But the reality is it didn't, because it wasn't able to work together, wasn't able to build bridges across those different divisions. They really all operated autonomously. And that lesson around people and culture, and that lesson around the importance to not just have the idea, not just have the vision, but have the execution, which requires the right people in the right places working together in the right ways, is one of the key lessons. And I think it's going to become critical in the third wave. These are tough challenges, some of the sectors that are ripe for disruption, and it's why it's going to require this different mindset.
Right. And from the Department of Non Sequiturs, do you make your bed?
Do I make my bed?
Yeah.
Well, right now I'm in a hotel room and it's unmade. So I guess the answer is sometimes I do and sometimes I don't.
Okay, it's not a ritual for you, not some
No,
sort of a habit that you have.
no.